Hey guys, so a couple of months ago now we took a look at a pre-production version of Fanatec's new CSL pedal ecosystem. Now, back then there was a missing piece of the puzzle. We didn't have access to the all-important load cell kit. Now, Fanatec have very kindly sent us across the full kit today to check out for you guys. So what I would recommend is go back and have a look at the original review that we did of the pre-production stuff. Not a whole lot has changed between what we saw then and what we're seeing now, so that makes our job a lot easier. But we want to try and cover 4 main questions which we know you guys are wondering about in today's video and keep it as efficient as we possibly can. So question number 1, is it worth upgrading to the load cell kit over the basic pedal set? Now the load cell kit is of course a little bit more expensive, so we'll have a look at whether that is worth the upgrade. We'll also see whether the tuning kit is worth the upgrade too. But 3 other big questions that I want to answer in today's video are, is it worth side grading, I guess you could call it, from the CSL Elite pedals, which the load cell kit is no longer available for, to the CSL pedals? These are a little bit cheaper as an overall kit, and we will talk about pricing later on. But is it worth going across to this set from CSL Elite pedals? Is it worth skipping these all together and looking at the Clubsport V3 pedal set, including the performance kit? But I'm sure another thing a lot of people will be wondering about is, how do these pedals compare to the Thrustmaster T-LCM load cell pedal? So we'll be covering that in today's video as well. By the end of the video, you should have a good idea of whether these are the pedals for you and how they compare objectively to the CSL Elites, the Fanatec Clubsport V3s, and the T-LCM. So let's get going. So before we get these guys unboxed, let's just quickly run you through pricing. So the standard 2 pedal set, which comes with our throttle and brake, obviously both position based, comes in at $79.95 US dollars or euros. If we want to upgrade to the clutch kit as well to give us the 3 pedal set, the clutch kit is $39.95 US dollars or euros. Now remember that the clutch kit becomes redundant if you do buy the load cell pedal kit. The load cell becomes the brake, and then the original brake becomes the clutch. So we set that guy aside once we do that. So the load cell kit is $139.95 euros or US dollars, $119.95 if you buy it during the Black Friday sales, and we will put some links down in the description below for you guys so you can check that out. And then the tuning kit, if you do wish to go with that, is another $34.95, and that is purely just down to, you know, subjective choice there. So we will give that a little run later on as well, let you know whether we felt like it was worth it or not, but purely just down to whether or not you like it, basically. There's no real advantage to driving with it in terms of, you know, the core functionality of the pedals. So what that ultimately boils down to is, if we disregard the clutch kit and the tuning kit, we're looking at, what is it, $219.90 for our CSL pedals and our load cell kit. That's not including the discount during the Black Friday sales, because we don't know when you guys are going to be watching the video, obviously. So how does that compare to the price of the old CSL Elite pedals? With the load cell kit, they came in at $239.90. Now, obviously you can't buy that load cell anymore, so it's kind of redundant, but I just want to give you that pricing just for comparison reasons. Now, if we compare that to the Clubsport V3 pedals, they come in at $359.95 for the basic pedal set with the 3 pedals. Obviously the brake is already a load cell in that case. $29.95 extra for the performance kit if you want to add that on top, and I would definitely recommend you do go for that performance kit if you are looking at the Clubsport V3 pedals. It is absolutely worth the upgrade. It really does transform the driving experience. So you're looking at $389.90 for the V3 pedals with the performance kit, so quite a lot more expensive than these are. Now, we did make reference to the Thrustmaster T-LCM pedals a little bit earlier as well. Now, pricing there really varies massively depending on where you purchase them from. I've seen pricing anywhere from $195 US dollars all the way up to $400 US dollars. So definitely recommend you jump online, search all your favorite stores there. Amazon seems to have deals quite often as well, but somewhere between the sort of $200 to $400 range seems to be where they are in US dollars and euros. So that's the comparison there. So yeah, going to be really interesting to see how all of these products compare to each other. As we've come to expect from Fanatec, very well packaged here. We're just going to slide this out. We're going to, you know, spend as little time here as we possibly can, just quickly give you an idea of exactly what's going on. We've got our standard inclusions here of a quick start guide. Takes you through all the important things with regards to mounting, wiring and everything. We'll of course make sure that's all clear to you in this video too. We've got a sticker sheet, of course. We've got our heel rest / base plate, and that allows us to mount the pedals directly to the face through the holes here. Take off that layer. We've got some desiccant material in there as well, so we don't get any moisture issues. We've got our RJ45 cable, some spacers and tools, bits and pieces in there to get everything put together. Then in our second layer here, we have our brake pedal and of course our throttle pedal. So we'll set this part out of the way. Now the way this works is very simple. You can see we've got 4 mounting holes in the bottom of each pedal. So that's our throttle, that is our brake, and those simply just correspond with the holes in our heel rest here. So all we need to do is just position them however we want and put the screws through, which are obviously included in the bag, and we're good to go. So that means that you can space them far apart if you're wanting to drive with 2 pedals for formula style driving, anything that doesn't require a clutch. And of course you can move them closer together if you wish to do so. And of course, you guessed it, if you want to go with the clutch kit as well, you would configure like so, and then put your clutch on the outside there. So let's set all of these bits and pieces aside just for now, and we'll grab out our clutch kit quickly as well. So this is going to be exactly the same idea. Quick start guide in the top.
Pardon me.
Here we go. Okay, another sticker sheet. More desiccant. We've got another little toolkit here as well with 4 screws, so we can drop them in from the top. And then this is almost identical to our throttle pedal, except if you have a look at the throttle, you can see this has connections for our brake, clutch, and connection back through to the wheelbase with an RJ12 connection, whereas our clutch pedal just has an RJ12 fly lead, which we connect back in on this side. So we'll set these guys aside again and just quickly run you through this again. So we've got our brake, we've got our clutch, and our throttle. These 2 fly leads are going to connect back into the control module here in our throttle pedal, and then that's going to connect back to a wheelbase, and it all bolts down on this. So simple as that. Let's have a look now quickly at our load cell kit 2. So we'll pop that out of the box. Another quick start guide. Okay. Stickers. So in this case, we have a nice braided USB cable. This does add the USB functionality to the kit as well. So if you're just running with the clutch kit, the standard brake, and the standard throttle pedal, you are limited to connecting the pedals only to the wheelbase via that RJ12 connection. You don't have any USB connectivity unless you buy the Fanatec Clubsport USB adapter, which allows you to connect pedals in, or a handbrake or clutch, to USB directly. So if you're wanting to use the pedals with a different ecosystem, you will need to buy that adapter unless you buy the load cell kit. So that's one added advantage of the load cell. But we get our USB A to B cable as well as a RJ12 fly lead for connecting our load cell as well. So let's pop this guy out. There we go. That's actually got quite a bit of weight to it. It feels quite nice and solid, and yeah, I think at least as an initial impression, it feels a lot more solid, a lot more high quality than I was actually expecting. So yeah, that's pretty good. So one more thing to have a quick look at here as well, our pedal tuning kit. So essentially all this is just replacement faces here. You can see the standard ones are this rounded black plastic. Probably not going to bother the majority of people, but we'll talk about that when we get into the driving experience later on. But you do have the option for a tuning kit, which literally just bolts on and replaces all 3 pedal pads. Now you may recognize this finish from the Clubsport V3 pedal. So it is exactly the same brushed aluminium anodized finish. And yeah, it's as simple as that. So it is quite cheap to go with the standard 3 pedal set, which uses Hall effect sensors across all 3 pedals. Now the use of Hall effect sensors is an important thing to call out, because on the CSL Elite pedals, which this supersedes in the Fanatec ecosystem, that was actually using rotary potentiometers, which are a moving part and they can wear out and take on dust and debris over time. We have seen that happen on a few sets of CSL Elite pedals. Our own actually needed to be cleaned out a couple of times to get things working back to normal. So with Hall effect sensors, all you're doing is measuring the flow of electrons across a metal plate and how that's influenced by a magnet or a magnetic field. As you move the pedal, the magnetic field changes, and that is interpreted as a signal, as an input value for the sim. So no moving parts, less wear and tear, definitely an upgrade, at least in terms of the mechanical construction. Whether or not it makes any difference in terms of the driving feel, obviously we'll determine a little bit later on. But yeah, an important thing to call out there. Obviously, load cell pedal is using a load cell in both cases with the CSL Elite and the CSL pedals. Now we did mention earlier that the load cell kit essentially makes the clutch kit redundant. So let's spin all the pedals around now and quickly explain exactly how that works. So we've got our throttle, we've got our load cell brake, we've got our standard brake, and we've got our clutch kit. So you can see between the throttle, the standard brake, and the standard clutch, all 3 are using the Hall effect sensor. You can actually see that just there. That's the sensor, and that is the magnet that I was referencing just before. So all three of these pedals are pretty much the same in their fundamental design. Now you can see the little foam insert here, which is what gives us our sensation when we push down on our standard brake pedal. And obviously you can see straight away that is a lot softer than our load cell pedal is. If I put the same amount of force just with my hand there, you can see just how different that is. So obviously it's going to be a very different driving feel even before we even get into the difference between a load cell pressure-based system and a Hall effect sensor positional-based system. So when we purchase the load cell kit, that essentially makes the clutch kit redundant. So we're going to set that aside, out of the way. So all we then need to do to convert our standard brake into our clutch pedal is just remove this little foam insert. Now that simply just pulls out according to the instructions. So yep, I can just grab it, pop it out just like that, set it aside, and that is now a clutch pedal. So you can see it does still have this part here, but that is essentially redundant because you can see the plastic bump stop here is what's interfacing with the metal here before it touches that. So that functions exactly the same way as our clutch kit did previously, and that's the reason why the clutch kit is redundant if you buy the load cell. So that leaves us with a clutch, a load cell brake, and a throttle. We then can mount the three to our heel plate, and that is it. So let's quickly talk about electrical connectivity here as well. So you can see now we have two control modules. So we've got the original one inside our throttle pedal, which had the RJ12 connection to our wheelbase. We now have the upgraded one in our load cell, which again does have a wheelbase connection as well as a PC connection. So you can run the pedals through the wheelbase to get that added functionality of the tuning menu customization, or we can connect directly to our PC if we're running it with a different ecosystem. So what we would do now is connect our brake, which is now our clutch, to the clutch input on the throttle pedal. So that is simply going to plug in like so. Then we're going to take our RJ12 fly lead, which came included with the load cell kit. That is going to connect from the wheelbase connection on our throttle pedal back across to the load cell connection on our load cell, like so. And then we would connect through to our wheelbase with the RJ12 connection or our PC. Now, never connect both of them. I have actually seen cases where people have damaged control modules by connecting to the wheelbase as well as the USB. I assume that's probably related to the fact that it's getting two power sources from the two different connections. So yeah, definitely choose one or the other, not both. So from there, it is as simple as just clipping your cables into the provided cable management clips here, screwing the pedals into the desired positions, and you're good to go. But before we do that, I do want to just quickly run you through some of the features of this load cell pedal specifically. So we'll get everything unplugged again and let's focus in on that. So we've got our CSL Elite pedal set here with our load cell as well as our CSL Pedal load cell to do a bit of comparison. First of all, I wanted to just take you through the design of this. So we can see in the back here, we've got an elastomer stack as it's called. So as we push down on the pedal, those elastomers compress, and you'll get a better look at this when we get up and driving in just a minute. Now, we have a 60 Shore rating on the hardness here, and it isn't adjustable. Unlike our CSL Elite pedals, which you can see actually had a little foam insert here by default to give us a little bit of initial uptake in the pedal. Now that is, a subjective thing. Some people might like that, some people might not like it at all. And I actually found that that was a little bit too much on the CSL Elite pedals. That was one of the things that I wasn't a big fan of on these. I do like to have a little bit of uptake, but probably only about half of what was here. But the big point here is that we did have a selection of elastomers to give us an adjustable range between about 60 and 90 Shore for our CSL Elite pedals, whereas with the CSL pedal, we don't have that adjustability. So what you get is what you get. If you don't like it, then you're gonna have to get creative in the DIY space to make any adjustments here. Now, it shouldn't be too difficult to modify this, but again, we do have to remember that we do have to operate within the confines of what is provided by the load cell as well. So obviously, if you make it too stiff, you're gonna end up saturating your load cell. Or if you were to make it too soft, you might end up in a situation where you weren't taking advantage of the full resolution of the load cell and therefore not getting an accurate measurement inside the game. So you will just need to take those kinds of things into account if you are getting getting creative with DIY. Now, I have seen a couple of comments from people comparing the 60 kilogram load cell in the CSL Pedal load cell kit to the 90 kilogram load cell that we have in the CSL Elite kit. So that may sound like a downgrade, and it may well be. We'll comment on that when we go for a drive a little bit later on. But what I did want to do here is point out an objective difference in the fundamental design between the two pedals. So in the case of the CSL pedal, or the CSL Pedal load cell kit, this is the load cell that we're looking at on the back here, and you can see this little cutout in the metal here. So what happens is, as we push down on the pedal, there's a little bit of deflection in that metal, and the actual load cell, or the strain gauge in that load cell, is this little part here, which is housed inside some resin. So what happens is it measures the deflection on that piece of metal there, and that's what's ultimately determining the amount of force that's being applied to the pedal. Now, in the case of the CSL Elite pedal, rather than being in the base plate here, it's actually measuring the amount of deflection in the pedal arm itself. So inside this little part on the back here. So again, we don't know exactly how that's going to impact the driving experience just yet, so I'm certainly not making excuses, but I just wanted to point out that there is a fundamental difference between the design on the two pedals. So ultimately, it's not comparing apples and apples when we have a look at the 60 kilogram load cell on the CSL pedal compared to the CSL Elite pedal. I thought that was an important thing to just point out here. One other important point of difference here is the CSL Elite load cell had a resolution of 16-bit, whereas the CSL load cell has a resolution of 12-bit. So what that means in the real world with the CSL Elite, you had a resolution of 65,536 points throughout the stroke. So essentially what that means is you got 65,536 different measurement points as you push down the pedal. And you can imagine, you know, that is a huge amount of measurement range for such a small amount of stroke. With 12-bit resolution, we have 4,096 points of resolution. So you can imagine there 4,096 points as we're pushing down on the pedal. Whether or not you can feel a difference between the two, personally, I can't. I've talked about this in many other pedal reviews that we've done in the past. I really think that, you know, beyond 12-bit resolution, you just don't really get any benefit when it comes to pedals. Obviously, if you're talking about rotation on a wheelbase or something like that, it's very different. That resolution can definitely absolutely make a difference. But in the context of pedals, at least for me, I can't tell the difference between the two, and I don't really see that to be a problem. But, you know, other people may disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. So look, other than that, very, very simple design. You can see the metal cage here with the nice pearl plating finish that's on it. Same deal across all three pedals. And again, we commented on all that stuff when we had a look at the prototype model a little bit earlier on. So if you wanted to see more around that design element, then go and check out that video. We've got a load cell sitting on the back here. You know, the electronics are exposed. You can see the part on the back there, but there's no real moving parts here. No sort of opportunity for dust or debris to get in. And if we spin it around here, you can actually see a little plastic insert here where the cable runs out. And yeah, it's all nicely managed and everything. There's no exposed wiring or cables anywhere which are likely to get snagged or caught up in your shoes or anything like that. Obviously, they are using some plastics here, and we would expect that for the price as well. But yeah, look, there's no metal to metal contact anywhere. We've got plastic inserts and, you know, bushings everywhere where we need to. I don't anticipate that we'll have any problems with creaking or groaning or squeaks or anything like that, but obviously we'll look at that when we go for a drive too. But yeah, look, for the price, again, we do have to adjust our expectation here compared to a lot of the other pedals that we've reviewed recently here on the channel. And yeah, I'm not seeing any issues whatsoever with the basic design here. So let's get these all connected up now. Let's get it mounted up on the base plate. I just want to quickly run you through a couple of things when it comes to mounting the pedals as well. And then we'll get into software and driving. So we've got our CSL pedals mounted up now. We've got our throttle, our load cell brake, and our original brake, which is now converted into a clutch. So I just wanted to take you through a couple of notes with regards to general usability and mounting. So first thing, and I think probably the most important thing with regards to this load cell, is the fact that you are not going to be using this on carpet or any sort of a polished or tiled floor without having it fixed somehow in position. So you are definitely going to need some sort of a wheel stand or a mounting, you know, some sort of a mounting solution so that these aren't going to move around on the floor. Likewise, if you're using a chair with rollers on it, you're going to have a bad time using a load cell brake as well. And that's not a complaint about these pedals specifically. Any sort of load cell brake, you're going to have problems if things are moving around. And the reason why that is such a big deal is because braking in particular all comes down to muscle memory. So if things are changing, if things are moving, if we don't have that consistency consistency every single time we push the pedal, we're never going to establish that muscle memory, and all the benefits from the money that you spent on a load cell brake are all just going to go straight out the door. So when you're buying a load cell brake, and this is one of the things with sim racing in general, we've talked about this before, it is a bit of a rabbit hole. When you upgrade one thing, it does lead to the necessary upgrade of other things as well. And high quality pedals and a solid mounting solution are the two most important things when it comes to driving quickly and consistently in sim racing. So I just wanted to point that out straight away. If you are considering the load cell, you're going to need to have a solid mounting solution, which includes a chair, which isn't going to move around every single time you push on the pedals. So hopefully that's clear. I wanted to explain one other thing for you guys as well if we flip these up. Now, we highlighted this in our closer look at the prototype hardware as well. So if you've already watched that video, I will be repeating myself a little bit here, but I think this is important to understand for those who might have skipped through that video. So if we look at the underside here, we've got some holes in the rear for mounting a bolt through into our rig. And then we've got two tapped threads on the mounting plate here as well. So you can see we've got these spaces which make that line up. So essentially we have to bolt in from the underside into these M6 threads here to mount these pedals on the front half. Now the reason why I highlight that is because it's going to make mounting onto profile or anything where you can't get in from the underside pretty much impossible with these pedals. So that is a really important difference between the mounting solution that we have on these pedals and the mounting solution that we had on the CSL Elite pedals. You can see on these ones, we've actually got a little channel in the side here and no thread. So what we could do is we could get a bolt in. It was a little bit awkward, but you could get a bolt in or a nut in and actually go from the top down, which meant you could mount it on a solid piece of hardware without the need to be able to get in from underside. So you can imagine for aluminium profile in particular, there's no way once you've got a once you've got a T-nut inside the profile, there's no way to get in underneath it and screw something up from the bottom. So that's the reason why I'm highlighting that. So I do prefer, even though it was a little bit clumsy and not everybody liked it, I do prefer the more versatile mounting solution on the CSL Elite pedals to what we have on these. Now again, remembering the target market for these pedals, most people probably aren't going to be mounting these on the type of rig where it's going to be a problem. So I'm not saying, you know, this is a major issue or anything like that. It's just something to be aware of because it will limit the solutions that are available for mounting the pedals. But other than that, you can see very straightforward. We've got our 4 bolts in position, or 4 screws I should say, for each of the pedals. No issues at all with flex from side to side, even before we've even bolted them down. So once those are bolted to our rig, there's going to be no issues with side to side movement whatsoever. And you can see we do have these rubber pads here to stop them from moving around on the floor, and they do work absolutely fine. We did test that when we went for a drive with the standard Hall effect sensor based brake pedal. But again, with the load cell pedal, you are going to have issues if you don't have these fixed into position. But I think that is everything we need to cover in terms of the hardware. We will have a look at the tuning kit a little bit later once we get up and driving too. But yeah, let's get into software calibration and driving experience. We're going to compare to the experience with the CSL Elite pedals, the T-LCM pedals as well. We want to definitely check those out. And yeah, hopefully pretty soon we'll know whether these are the pedals for you. Let's go. Okay, so pedals are all set up now on our Next Level Racing FGT Elite, which is a nice solid cockpit. Should be absolutely fine for these pedals. We're not going to have any problems with flex interfering with the review process. Now what we've done is we've set up the original brake that comes with the CSL pedals back with the foam insert again in the clutch position, but this allows us to do a direct comparison between the feeling of the default brake pedal and the load cell kit upgrade. So if you want to see a full breakdown on the driving experience with the standard brake, go and check out our prototype review video that we did a couple of months ago. It hasn't changed at all in its feeling and how it performs and operates. So that is still very much valid. I do just want to quickly touch upon the difference in the feeling between the two pedals, and then we'll do our driving tests today, specifically with the load cell, talk about the experience with that. Now you also notice that I am driving with socks on, doing that intentionally because I'm assuming that the majority of people that are in the market for a set of pedals around this sort of budget probably aren't going to be forking out for an expensive set of racing boots. But we will do a little bit of testing with boots on as well, just to see how the performance is there. And we will of course touch on the tuning kit, those replacement pedal faces, a little bit later. But what I can tell you straight off the bat, with socks on, these pedal faces actually do feel quite good to me. And you would have seen this when I did the Acertec pedal review a couple of weeks ago. I do like to sort of slide the pedal underneath my foot, as you can see there. So as I push down the throttle, the pedal's kind of just sliding in. Because of that beveled or curved face, it actually has quite a nice feeling to it and allows you to push it from multiple different angles as well without it feeling different. So it does actually feel quite consistent regardless of the angle that you're pushing it on up to a point. If you do have the pedals completely flat though, they are on quite a tilt forward. So I did find that the spring progression just felt a little bit weird. And again, it's compared to what I'm used to. You absolutely would adapt to these pedals and it wouldn't be a problem. But it kind of felt like I was already halfway through the pedal stroke by the time I actually started pushing it. So it did require a little bit of reset in muscle memory just to get my head around the throttle. But again, if you were to buy these pedals and get used to them, that's not going to be a problem. I assume that's done intentionally so that you can run the pedals on the floor. Obviously, if you're in a more upright seating position, having your feet flat down to the ground, you will need that angle so that you can control your inputs a little bit more. So remembering again, if we do upgrade to the load cell, that's going to be off the cards. We're not going to be able to put these on the floor regardless of the kind of surface you have because they're just going to slide away. But if you do have some sort of means of, you know, fixing your chair to the pedals, even if it's just like a plank of wood that you bolt the chair and the pedals to, even on the floor, that will work absolutely fine. So it is quite a versatile design in that regard, but just be aware that if you are mounting on a rig, because we have those curved pedal faces, it is still quite adaptable. If you change over to the tuning kit, then obviously you're doing away with that curve, which means you will be more limited in the angle that you can use the pedals on. You will have to, you know, adjust your rig around to suit. So again, that's going to be a subjective thing. It's going to completely depend on how you've got things set up, but just something to be aware of there. Now look, in terms of the comparison between the two brake pedals, the load cell does feel very good actually. It's beyond my expectation for a load cell of this price point, just on initial face value here. So when I push the pedal down, there's a couple of things that I look for specifically. I look for any binding, any texture in the pedal, and I also look for a really clearly, nicely defined threshold point. So what I mean by that is a point where I can push the pedal down to consistently and actually feel the right amount of pressure fighting against me. So I can feel by pressure how far I'm pushing the pedal rather than by the distance that I'm actually pushing it. So I can push down to there, and just having a look at my brake pressure on the screen, you can see that is maxing out the load cell at the moment with the brake force set to 30%. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that up. And for me, in the majority of cars that I'm driving at the moment, I'm doing mostly GT3. So I like to have my threshold point at around about that 80% brake pressure. So I'm actually going to wind that up even further still. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. So I'm going to set it to maximum, and yeah, okay, so that's about right. That's about right for me. So I can't think of a scenario where I'd ever push harder than about that. That would be my maximum. So I'm not saturating the load cell there. I am close, even on the maximum setting. So that's something just to be aware of. If you are really heavy-footed, then you may run into issues maxing out the load cell. But I think if you're braking with finesse, then it's not going to be an issue. And again, it will be something that I think that you'll adapt to. So I don't think that the 60 kilogram load cell is going to be an issue for the majority of people. It certainly isn't going to be for me, but again, it's just going to be, you know, depending on your style. But, you know, you will need to adapt your style to suit the pedals that you're running with, and that's the case for any pedals. It's never going to be, you know, something just works absolutely perfectly for you without any tweaking or adjustment or, you know, resetting your muscle memory. So yeah, I think that's going to be fine. But getting back to the threshold point, if I push down, I'm hitting that sort of 70, 80% about there. So that was a little bit higher. That was a little bit higher, and I should be doing it without looking at the chart because I'm modulating based off what I'm seeing. But if I look away, about there, about there, about there, that one wasn't any good, about there. So you can see how consistent I'm being with that straight away, and I haven't set any muscle memory yet. Now, if we have a look at the bar for the clutch here, that is our original brake pedal as it's set up at the moment. Now, obviously, you could calibrate this in-game or even in the settings, which we'll have a look at in just a moment, to adjust a little bit. But the point here is that I feel very little resistance behind my foot. I can push that pretty much all the way to the mechanical bump stop at the end of the travel, and I feel very little change in the amount of resistance that's fighting against me. So again, somebody may come up with some sort of an insert to change the feeling there. So I'm not saying that it's always going to be that way, but by default, again, remembering that we don't have any mechanical adjustability with the pedal, that, you know, again, you could get used to driving with this. So I'm not saying that, you know, it's bad, but it's just so different from what I'm used to with a load cell or a pressure-based system. So what that means in the real world is when I push my foot down, I just have no reference point for how much pressure I'm putting in. It's purely based off the position. And because I'm not used to braking in that style, it's a real struggle for me. So you can absolutely get used to driving that way. And there's plenty of examples of people that are lightning fast on position-based brake pedals. So I'm not saying that you can't drive quickly with these pedals, but I think when it comes down to consistency, you know, based on pressure rather than position is always going to be a better way to do it. And we used the analogy in our Acertech pedal review recently of, you know, trying to, you know, close your eyes and touch a point on a table multiple times, and you're going to struggle to touch the same place every single time. But if you push down on a set of scales with your eyes closed, it's a lot easier to match the same pressure every single time. So it's a lot easier fundamentally for your body to remember the amount of force that it's putting on something rather than the position that you're inputting. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you want to see the experience driving with the brake pedal and how that actually went for us, then check out our original review of the CSL pedals. But now let's get into the software a little bit here. It's very basic interface. We do have the pedals connected via the RJ12 cable into the wheelbase. So we do have the ability to make adjustments on the fly from the wheel as well. And if you want to understand how that works, have a look at any one of our Fanatec wheel or wheelbase reviews where we go through the tuning menu there. But basically you have an adjustment in the menu here where you can adjust your brake force exactly the same as you see here, up and down. Now, it's not something that you'd generally be adjusting on the fly anyway, so it's not massively advantageous having that. So you can connect them via USB if you want. Obviously, it frees up a USB port on your machine as well if you connect through the base. And again, obviously, if you're running on a console, then that is necessary as well. So we can see here graph for our throttle, our clutch, and our brake. Obviously a handbrake too. We don't have that connected currently. We've got a switch here to combine the pedals into one axis as well. Some older games do require that, so that is a good feature to have there. Not something that you see on many pedals these days, so I'm glad that they do include that. We've got our adjustment for brake force as we saw before. Now we've also got a button here to enable the CSL Pedal Load Cell Kit manual mode. So this allows us very simply to just set a maximum and minimum threshold point for each of the pedals. Again, the brake is based off our brake force, so we can set a minimum dead zone, and then obviously our brake force determines the maximum that we have to push down the pedal to operate that. So all very straightforward there. No need to really go into any more detail on the software, I don't think. And again, you can just go back in and jump around to your various other peripherals and configure everything from the one interface, which is nice and clean. Definitely one of the strengths, I would say, in the Fanatec ecosystem, and something that shouldn't be overlooked. But that is it for software. So let's get in now and do some driving. Okay, so as always, we'll start off with our initial tests here in iRacing, doing the Porsche 911 Cup car around Imola. Now, I really love this car and track combination for testing pedals in particular, because this car is very, very difficult to drive, doesn't have any ABS. It's also like a pendulum with the engine in the back too. So if you do get things wrong under braking, you loop around really, really easily. You really do have to have a lot of fine feel on the pedals, a lot of finesse in your braking, and a lot of finesse in your modulation. So good test there. The track is also particularly good because you've got a lot of off-camber stuff going on. You've got braking zones where you're coming around corners downhill, and again, very, very easy to lose the back end of the car. So perfect storm of all the things that are fighting against you when you're trying to drive quickly. Now, we're not paying attention to lap times here really either, simply because, you know, it's a brand new rig to me with the, you know, projector and everything set up differently from what I'm used to. So there's a lot of things that are fighting against me here, but we can definitely talk about the feeling of the pedals and the initial impressions there. So let's get underway. So I'm gonna just basically do all the things that I would normally do on this track. So brake in the same places and just sort of see how natural and instinctive things feel to me. And I didn't just lock up the brakes immediately into turn one, which I thought may happen. A little bit of a pinch there on the rear right, I think, but that's okay. Late apex. So I'm finding I can really modulate my throttle very well as well. The way that plastic pedal face slips underneath my sock is really comfortable. It gives me a lot of control, so I'm quite happy with the plastic pedal faces. I mean, you know, they don't feel expensive and premium, but they definitely get the job done. And like, I do prefer, and again, it's a subjective thing, but I do prefer to have quite a slippery pedal face, particularly when driving with socks. It's something that I've had to get used to with the Acertech Invicta pedals that I'm driving with at the moment. But again, it's just a personal preference thing. Get it turned in. Try not to lose the back end there under throttle. Easy to get too keen on the throttle. So this corner is the particularly difficult one. You've got to brake as you come around the apex here, brake down the hill and get it pulled up. But I was able to modulate my braking pretty comfortably there. And I'm actually quite surprised with the level of control that I'm feeling through the load cell. It's quite instinctive, and you know, casting my mind back to driving with the Husingfeld Ultimate Plus pedals, which is the last load cells that I used. I was driving with them up until quite recently. Well, a little bit of a lock up there. So it is that little bit softer than what I would normally have, but again, that is just a subjective thing. Unfortunately, we don't have any adjustability with these pedals, so that is definitely a downside. You're not going to be able to tune them to be exactly the way you might like them, but I think you'll definitely be able to get your head around them, and you'll be able to adjust your muscle memory to suit what's on offer here. And I think that's probably the most important thing. The fundamentals to feeling what you need to feel to drive quickly are absolutely there with this load cell, which was, I guess, what I was most concerned about given the price point, is there may be too many sacrifices, I guess, but doesn't really seem to be the case. And the struggles that I'm having here are just purely down to a complete reset in muscle memory rather than the fact that I'm not feeling what I need to feel to drive. So braking about the 80. Get it turned in. All right. Easy on the throttle. Try to pick up the pace a little bit now. So I did have another little lock up there. I'm just tempted to put more pressure in than I should be, simply because of the pedals that I'm used to, but I'm learning, and I was able to back out there and modulate my input to stop the lockup and still pull the car up for the apex. So yeah, there's no red flags so far. We'll try to go a little bit quicker now. I'll probably crash. Again, we're not really paying attention to lap times here because there are so many things that are different, but braking at the 200. Did have another little lock up there. I'm just adjusting to that threshold point still. Again, I was able to modulate on entry though. Braking at the 50. Late apex, get it back on the gas as early as we can without the car swinging around. Really liking the throttle pedal, I gotta say. It has a really good amount of control. Get it turned in, back on the gas, not too greedy with the throttle. Braking at the 50, turn in, little dab on the gas again and heavy braking. Again, a little lock up there, just trying to get my head around the exact amount of pressure that's required. Remember, this car is extremely sensitive under the brakes. So yeah, absolutely feeling all the things that I need to feel. And yeah, look, I'm honestly, these, in particular, the load cell, but the pedals as a whole, considering the price point, I've got to say it does exceed my expectations. I'm feeling all the things I need to feel. And while obviously my pace is down because it's not the hardware that I'm used to driving with, I can definitely say that if I was to put hours and hours and hours into this, I would adjust my muscle memory and I would have all the control that I need, I think. And beyond that, it's really just down to subjective choice. So what we'll do now is we'll put a bunch of time into it. Again, we'll put the tuning kit on as well. We'll do some driving with boots on as well, see how that feels. We'll put the T-LCM pedals on the rig as well, see how they compare. We'll get Tom in the rig too, let him do some driving and get his impressions, and yeah, we'll wrap it all up with our conclusions. So we've both spent quite a bit of time driving with all the pedals that you see on the table over the last couple of days, but I wanted to start off by just talking about the CSL pedals specifically within their own little ecosystem. There's a few different options and configurations there that we can choose from. So we'll start off at the beginning. What did you think about the driving experience with the throttle and just the brake? Remember, we do have the more detailed review that we did of the prototypes before, but just to let people know quickly, what did you think?
Well, I think overall, given the price point, they're a very well presented set of pedals. They do the job really well. They're very smooth feeling. There's no funny noises coming from them. There's no, graininess or any inconsistencies in the feeling or anything like that. The brake is very light feeling, but not as light as a lot of other really cheap sets of pedals. So, it's pretty good.
I think that the standout thing for me is, while they do look very basic and very bare bones, they almost look like a skeleton of a pedal set.
Yeah.
All of the important things, again, factoring in the price point, are kind of covered. Yep. So you've got a really good rigidity from side to side. There's no excessive flex from side to side or play. There's no dead zone. There's nothing like that.
Yep.
You don't have metal to metal contact for the bump stops. You do have plastic there, so that quietens it down a little bit there as well. We've got Hall effect sensors across both pedals too. So, all those main things are kind of covered.
Yep.
And I don't see any cause for concern when it comes to reliability. There's plenty of adjustment there too, at least in terms of, up and down, left and right, that kind of thing. Obviously, we don't have any preload adjustment, but you don't have preload adjustment on anything that comes anywhere close to this price.
That's
so
right, yeah.
I think as, for me at least, a standalone 2-pedal set, it does a really good job.
When you're looking at things like Logitech pedals and things like that, they really do stand up really well.
Absolutely. So definitely. I think if you're looking at a entry-level pedal set to get you into the Fanatec ecosystem, then really, really good choice there. You definitely won't be disappointed. So I think the main thing for me is the load cell is so much better than the standard brake. Like, it really is a transformative upgrade.
It is.
So for me, given that the clutch kit is, $39.95, the load cells are $139.95, so $100 US more. If you buy it in the Black Friday sale, it's $119.95, so you save yourself $20 there. But look, the load cell is so much better that I would definitely recommend, if the best that you can afford is the basic pedal set, and you really do need to have a clutch for the type of driving that you're doing. Maybe you're doing a lot of drifting or something like that, where braking isn't maybe quite so important as it is where you're sort of threshold braking on a racetrack.
Good point.
Then go for it. But for the majority of people that are interested in driving quickly and consistently, in racing style sim driving, then I would definitely put the money towards the load cell kit and not worry about the clutch kit. Remembering again, if you have skipped to this part of the video, the configuration that we have here is if you buy the basic pedal set and then the load cell kit, then the standard brake becomes the clutch and the clutch kit becomes redundant, so you don't need to buy both. So for me, clutch kit, not really a compelling thing.
No, not really.
I would definitely save the money for the load cell kit, but I think if that's the best that you can afford, then
if you've got $40 and you really, really need a clutch, okay, maybe. But it's definitely worth saving up in my opinion as well.
Exactly. So that's the clutch kit. Now, the last thing here as well is, of course, the tuning kit. So, look, for me, it does look cool. It does look better. I actually kind of preferred driving with these. I think just because of the rounded face. I found that it did increase the adjustability in terms of angle on the pedals to suit more of a wider range of rigs, simply because, having that curved edge meant that you could hit it straight everywhere.
Yeah.
But
all right.
I kind of like having slippery pedals anyway. I like to have the throttle pedal kind of slide under my foot as I push it. That's just my style.
Fair, yeah.
And I think it is a very subjective thing, but you really liked this.
I quite like what are they calling it?
The tuning kit. Yeah.
Tuning, all right.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny name, isn't it? Because it's not really like...
Yeah, it could fool you into thinking you get more adjustments out of it as well, but no,
which
it's
you don't.
Just the pedal plate, the faces themselves.
So
I know I do quite like them though. Driving with stocks, which I do quite often, it does feel more solid and metal underneath your foot, and when you hit the bump stops with these ones, there is this kind of hollow feeling I found, which put me off a little bit. But with these ones, there's still that kind of hollow feeling when you hit the bump stops that you don't get in much more heavy duty sets of pedals, but this did reduce that a little bit. And I like the look of them. For me, they're pretty cool, but they aren't cheap.
No, what's the price on those? So it's
$35 US.
35 US, $34.95. Like, I mean, it's an aesthetic upgrade, essentially. Yeah. So if you like it, is it worth the money?
Yeah.
That's, I think,
honestly, depends how much money you've got.
Exactly. It's a subjective thing. So, look, overall, looking at this little ecosystem in itself, I think they've done a really good job in the overall design. Yeah, it really does tick all the boxes. And I think, like, honestly, for me, I think the main takeaway here is if you told me that these cost maybe 20 to 30% more than they cost, I'd still think that they were pretty good.
Yeah, you'd be missing some adjustments.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, in terms of how they feel, the quality of the feeling you get when you press on them, you'd believe it.
Definitely. So the next big question to answer, of course, is, are these an upgrade from the CSL Elite pedals? So we have the load cell there as well. I would say no. If you already own a set of CSL Elite pedals, unless you wanted a load cell upgrade and because you can't buy that anymore for those pedals, that would be the only really compelling reason I would see to swap across to these from those.
I agree. Yeah.
Otherwise, they fulfill the same need and the same purpose. And there are elements of the CSL Elite pedals that I actually prefer over these. I do like the kind of clean and basic design of these. But really, the only thing I found was just that adjustment in the load cell, having the adjustment between 60 shore up to about 90 shore, I think it is. Whereas with the CSL load cell, you don't have that adjustment. You are stuck with what you get out of the box. So again, the main comparison there that I think most people will be making is comparing the 60 kilogram load cell and 12-bit resolution that you get with the CSL load cell to the 16-bit and 90 kilogram load cell that you get on the CSL Elite pedals. Now, for me, I just didn't really notice any difference between the two.
Yeah, I did have to sort of adjust my style a little bit to make sure I wasn't maxing these out.
Okay.
So I am used to a much stiffer pedal. So I did have to change. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not what I've been used to. So I would prefer to be having a little bit more scope for pressing on that harder. But you'd get used to it for sure.
For me, like, I'm used to having that little bit of uptake in the pedal, and I am used to driving with extremely stiff pedals with the Acertec Invicta prototypes that we're running on the main rig at the moment. But I found that I was able to adapt pretty well to this. It did have a nice threshold point in there, which was well within the range of measurement for the load cell. So I didn't find maxing the load cell out to be a problem for me. But yeah, if you are really heavy-footed, then you may find that to be a problem for you. One of the things that you have to accept with any set of pedals is there is going to be a learning curve. You are going to have to adapt how you do it. And I think, if you were to learn to drive, again, using the Acertec pedals as an example, because they're so stiff, if you were to get used to that and then try to drive with the Thrustmaster T-LCMs, forget it.
Good luck.
Forget it. So, there is going to be a bit of a learning curve there. And again, remembering that people are likely to be upgrading from something like G27 pedals or, something like that to this. I don't think that it's going to be a problem for most people.
No, that's
true. That's my take on that situation. So, to summarize that, for me, if you already have the CSL Elites, don't side grade, because it is a side grade, it's not an upgrade. These are cheaper than those were. There's no real compelling reason to switch between the two. I don't think you're missing out by buying these instead of buying those, for me.
Agreed.
Okay, cool. So next comparison is these versus the T-LCMs from Thrustmaster. So this is a comparison that I've been wanting to do for a long time. You remember we had that stages of upgrade video series that we were working on, and we kind of put the brakes on that until we had these to do a comparison between the two. So this was something I was really interested in. Now, look, I'm going to be completely honest. I was actually really disappointed with the T-LCM pedals. They are a little bit cheaper if you get them at a good price, around $200 US, I think is the best price I've seen. I've seen them up to about 400, but the pricing really does seem to vary depending on when you buy. But assuming that they're $200 US, which is $20 US cheaper than the CSL pedals with the load cell kit, without the tuning kit. Honestly, I just didn't think that there was any comparison between the two. These are just fundamentally so much better. Let me pass that to you quickly. And I want to bring the T-LCM pedals into the shot here. So on paper, at least, the T-LCMs do actually sound like they're the better option. They've got a 100 kilogram load cell as opposed to the 60 on the CSL pedals. We have adjustability in the load cell as well. So we do have a little kit that comes with a whole bunch of springs and washers and inserts and bits and pieces that give us some adjustability, whereas we have none on the CSL pedals. But the experience for me was just really underwhelming with the T-LCM pedals. Even on the stiffest setting, just found that they were, I just found that pedal was going straight to the floor straight away. And if I spin them around here, That's not quite the hardest setting. So we have the 2 hardest springs here. You can also fill out that lighter spring there with some washers as well, which gives you a more linear response. What we have here is the weaker spring in the middle to give us that little bit of initial uptake in the pedal. And that does give us a threshold point. But you can see here, I can actually push that to the threshold point with my index finger, no problem at all. So even at the stiffest setting, that is quite weak. And I found after learning to drive with these, when I went to drive with these ones, I was just pushing it straight to the ground, even on the maximum setting. For me, I can't see any reason why anybody would ever want to have these adjusted lighter.
No.
Unless you're driving on a carpet floor or tiles or something where you needed to have them not attached to a rig. I think that's really the only area where I thought that this might be of benefit over the CSL pedals was just in those scenarios where you might need to have them on a floor and not have to worry about them sliding around.
Yeah, or for young kids maybe.
Or for young kids maybe as well, yeah. But I mean, there's just a few other elements that I just don't like on the T-LCMs. I mean, like even just look at the amount of movement there.
Rickety old things.
Yeah, and I mean, like that's got barely any movement at all. Like they just feel cheap compared to these. So yeah, overall just a very different approach to a set of pedals from Thrustmaster compared to Fanatec, despite them being quite similar on paper and even these potentially sounding like they would be better on paper.
Totally agree. It goes to show that on paper it doesn't matter so much, does it? Because the 100 kilogram load cell compared to the 60 is, it just doesn't seem like that. So as you were saying before with the side grade here from 90 kilograms to 60, it's not the important factor here. That's
exactly
not what we're talking about, because that 100 kilograms was nothing at all under your foot. It was silly. So while we've been saying that, you do adapt to a different pedal set and that kind of thing, I feel like these ones are going to be giving you a disadvantage and they're going to be harder to learn. Yeah, I feel like these are a much more minor upgrade from I'd say probably the best way I can describe it is, because you do have so much movement in the pedal, even though it's a load cell, you're still kind of relying on that hybrid kind of muscle memory where you're kind of partly using position, partly using pressure, but not really dependent on any one of the two. Yeah, probably your threshold point is when you extend your big toe.
Rather than, That's the experience using these compared to these. They are starkly different from each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to highlight, even though they do sound quite similar on paper. So for me, I would choose the Fanatec CSL pedals with the load cell over these every day of the week.
100%.
So let's move things around again a little bit here. We'll put these down on the ground. So comparing to the Fanatec V3s, now these were the first big upgrade that I had along with my Clubsport wheelbase 2.5 when I jumped up from a Logitech G27. So this was a really steep learning curve for me for a lot of the reasons that we talked about in this video. So probably a good little example there. But I drove with the standard foam inserts for the load cell for about 3 months before upgrading to the Performance Kit, which is absolutely a no-brainer upgrade in my book. That was a transformative experience going from the foam to the Performance Kit. So looking at the pedals standard, they're $360 US or $359.95. Performance Kit's an extra $30 on top US and absolutely worth it. Now we do have the damper kit on here as well, which I don't recommend. I didn't feel like it added anything to the driving experience. We did try it on the throttle pedal as well, and I found that it added a little bit of lift-off lag on the pedal and made it a little bit more difficult to control the throttle, even though it did feel quite nice. So yeah, I would say definitely don't waste your money on the damper kit. I would actually go as far as saying it is a waste of money. There are other things that you would be far better off spending that money on. But look, in terms of looking at it objectively, it is a expensive upgrade from the CSL pedal. So what are your thoughts? You've driven with these quite a bit as well.
Yeah, well, I moved from the CSL Elites over to these, and it was a transformative experience for me as well. It did allow me to hone in on some of those driving techniques that I wasn't really aware of much before of that, because my gear didn't really lend itself to those things. So the trail braking and threshold braking and those kinds of things. Once I was onto these, I was able to dial them in to really hone in those skills. It was a good experience jumping up to those. They're really nice, refined set of pedals. They feel solid. The bump stops feel nice and solid. It was a good experience. And I agree with the dampening kit. I tried to dial it out as much as I could. I didn't like it. It was also almost detrimental.
I agree. So look, in terms of other hardware as well, just one other thing we should call out here as well as the little vibration motors that we have on the back of the throttle.
I quite like that.
And the brake here. Yeah, look, I honestly, for me, it's a bit of a take it or leave it thing. It is a very, very subjective thing. I think objectively, the only The only criticism I really have of this, and I think there are third-party software packages available now which can actually, you know, manage this a little bit better. So maybe that's actually a good video to make.
Yeah.
But when I was driving with these as my daily driver, back then the Fanatec software basically kicked in the motors for ABS based on a pressure. So
force, yeah.
as soon as you were hitting a certain force, the motor would start spinning. Now, obviously, in a real life race car, or maybe it isn't obvious, but in a real life race car, or any car, the point where the ABS kicks in isn't going to be the same every time. Yeah. It's, you know, based off the types of tires that you've got on, tire temperature, surface texture, wetness, you know, all these things.
Yeah.
So there are scenarios there where you could actually be getting misinformation. You could actually be getting information which is detrimental to understanding what's going on with the car rather than actually helping you drive faster.
Yeah, you definitely need to dial it into each car and make sure you've got it set up right. But once you have, it's quite helpful. And that's one of the parts that made it really good for me to learn how to threshold brake properly because it was a nice distinctive...
So kind of like as a training tool kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. And you also had a butt kicker when you...
That's true, yeah. I mean, just thinking back to when I moved across to my Husingville Ultimate pedals from these, which was the next upgrade I did. And I actually had somebody ask me after a couple of months, how did you find not having the vibration motors anymore? And I kind of went, oh yeah. Like I hadn't even given it a thought because that's how much I didn't care.
Yeah.
But... you know, again, it is a subjective thing, but objectively, we do need to call out the fact that, you know, it does work in a certain way and, you know, it is what it is. But it is one thing that you have with the V3 pedals that you don't have on the CSL pedals, so it's an important thing to note. But yeah, look, they are in a different price bracket completely. They're, you know, almost double the price, and I think you are getting value for there. I guess what I'm mulling over in my mind here is, you know, if I had the choice between spending, you know, if I have $400 and I have the choice between buying this and maybe a secondhand butt kicker or something like that.
Yeah.
Or just buying this, which would I do?
Ooh, that is a tough one.
It's a really tough one.
It is, yeah.
I feel like ultimately you could learn to be as fast with these as you could be with these. So if that's the most important thing to you, then maybe that would be the better option. But these look much nicer on the rig. They have that kind of, feeling to them.
They're more sporty.
Yeah, I hate that word, but yes.
I know, that's why I used it.
Yeah, but no, I do agree with you. This is something that I would have more pride on having on my rig than these are.
Yeah, definitely.
Even though, objectively, these probably aren't twice the pedals that these are.
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing for these is the bump stop feel.
Yep.
It really is so much more solid feeling than those.
Yeah, and you've got that nice two-stage clutch feeling as well.
Yeah, the clutch is quite good too. So.
It is a really outstandingly well-refined product, I think, other than the... screws in the base plate here, which are made of cheese. Yeah, it isn't without its faults. We do have the cheese screws in the front here to take off the base plate. A lot of people also had problems removing the grub screw to install the performance kit too. So, you know, it's not perfect, but it is a really nice product overall. So, I think that pretty much covers everything in terms of the big questions. So let's just quickly run through all the key questions once more for you guys who might be skipping right to the end of the videos. So, CSL pedals with load cell kit on their own. Thumbs up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess the best way I can sum it up is even if they cost 20%, 30%, maybe more than they do, I'd still think they were pretty good value.
Yeah.
So other than, I would definitely want adjustability if it was going to cost that much more. But I do feel like they could charge more than they have for these pedals and they'd still be pretty good value.
Yep, especially just judging by what they feel like under your feet.
Yeah.
Going by that feeling alone, that sensation, they do feel more expensive than they are.
Yep. I would 100% agree with that. So in their own right, definitely a thumbs up there. Comparing to the CSL Elite pedals with load cell.
Oh, it's a sidestep, isn't it? If you've got these, don't change. If you're going to get those, don't worry about these.
Exactly, yeah. It's not, it's definitely not one of those scenarios where you go, oh, if only I'd known, then it's
and
fine.
while it's got adjustability in there, it's not...
How many times have you adjusted it?
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just kind of, we set it to the maximum stiffness and then never looked at it again, right?
That's right.
So, that's that. Okay, so CSL pedals versus the T-LCM pedals, which are probably the closest, which are available on the market right now in terms of what they look like on paper at least. So, what did you think about that?
Absolute no-brainer.
Yeah.
The Thrustmasters were pretty bad.
Yeah, I think that these really do walk all over the Thrustmasters. I think, again, objectively, the only compelling reason that I can think of, or two compelling reasons that I can think of to maybe consider the T-LCM pedals over the CSL pedals is if you're already invested in the Thrustmaster ecosystem, you want to keep everything within the same ecosystem, then maybe. I still think the driving experience is superior enough on these that I would probably just plug them in via USB anyway. So really that just boils down to people that are on a console and need to kind of stick within the same ecosystem for that reason.
That's true. Yeah.
Only other compelling reason I can think of is you are going to have a hard time driving with the load cell on carpet or on a tile floor if you don't have some way of fixing these to your chair so you're not moving. Obviously, that is something that is extremely important to the driving experience and something that shouldn't be overlooked. Because you don't need to push as hard on the T-LCM pedals to max them out, even though they do have the heavier load cell in them. You could drive with these even at the maximum setting without them sliding around on most floors, whereas you are going to have a hard time with the CSL pedals to do the same thing. So
it's not hard to put them on a plank of wood or get some bricks out.
It's not, but not everybody has the tools or the knowledge to do even, you know, basic things like that. A lot of people just want an out-of-the-box experience.
I feel it's definitely worth figuring it out, though.
Yeah. I mean, look, these are definitely a superior product. Yeah, I'm interested to hear from you guys that do have T-LCM pedals, what your experience has been like with them. I mean, I know, you know, up until now, they've really been the only load cell pedals other than, you know, the aftermarket load cell upgrades that you can buy for more entry-level pedals that were really kind of in that price bracket. So there really wasn't a whole lot to compare them to, but I really do feel like these are very much superior. So yeah, how do you feel about T-LCM pedals, you guys that are watching? Have you had a good experience with them? Do you kind of agree with our observations? I mean, obviously we are a little bit spoilt with some of the more high-end stuff that we've experienced, but, you know, comparing these to that,
yeah, I mean, on paper, you're really comparing the Thrustmasters to these, but under your foot, you're comparing them to the Logitech G920 or something like that. That's what they feel like.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've already talked about it in more detail earlier on in the video, so if you want to, you know, nut it out more, go check that out. But yeah, ultimately, these are definitely the superior pedals, in my opinion, and
yes,
you agree. So then just quickly recapping on Versus V3 pedals, more expensive, more refined, definitely an upgrade, but whether or not it's worth it, pretty much subjective. Personally, for me, I think there is a strong argument for buying these pedals and spending the extra money on something else.
But if you've already got these and you're a bit bummed that they brought these out and you think, oh, I could have just got those, be happy with these because there is a big improvement. So.
You've got adjustability, you've got the ability to add on the damper kit if you wish to do so, even though we don't recommend it. You have the ABS modules, the vibration motors. They are a better set of pedals overall. So that's that. So I think that's it, guys. Let us know if you have any questions down below. And if you do want to pick up a set of these pedals or any of the other products that you've seen other than the CSL Elite load cell, because you can't buy that anymore. But any of these, including the Thrustmaster stuff as well, if you want to pick up any of this stuff, we do have some links down in the description below, which help out the channel as well. So thank you very much for your support there. But above all, as always, thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Leave a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the video. And check out some of our other pedal review videos as well. We do have an abundance of them. We feel like we've kind of been doing a lot of pedal reviews lately.
I'm keen to lay them all out on the table and go through them all one day.
Kind of like what we did with the wheels recently.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, see whether we really do get a a 10 times the experience out of a set of pedals that cost 10 times as much. I think it'd be a good video. All right, let us know what you think, guys. We'll see you again soon.
See ya.
Bye.